why the housing market crash could be worse than you think. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. We got a good one for you today. Our good, faithful friend, Travis from the Real Estate Mindset has broke into the studio and he's here to give some real talk. What's going on, Travis?
Scott Walters, sir, I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me back on your show, man. It has been too long. I don't know why we haven't collabed sooner than this.
Well, it's busy out there, Travis. It's busy. It's been a really interesting time to be alive, post-pandemic, post-bubble. We're now in a stranglehold. We're flatlining at best. The million-dollar question now, of course, is this time different? I know there's a lot of information out there of people, especially the industry, who have financial gains saying exactly that this time is different. No crash risk here. Anytime the market exhibits bubble behavior, there's going to be crash risk. In fact, Travis, historically, every single time the housing market has exhibited crash behavior, or bubble behavior, it's crashed, and also recessions will follow and run parallel simultaneously, Travis. So is this time different, my friend? And is this crash, if it comes, million-dollar question, Travis, if it comes, is it going to be worse? What's your take?
Well, first of all, I would say that, it is absolutely different. There's a lot of different things that are going on right now in this housing market. And some of those things are actually much worse. For one thing, the equity run up these days was way worse than the equity run up of 2002 to 2008. So the equity run up is worse. The unaffordability is worse. And another thing that's worse that I'm seeing in this housing market, Scott, is the reckless purchasing, the emotional purchasing, and almost as if investors and realtors are pressuring and bullying people into purchasing. So I do think it's different right now. Now, to answer your question, do I think it's going to be worse? I think that's going to depend on one thing: how much quantitative easing and government intervention there will be. And I'm at the point right now, Scott, where I think that because the thing is this, we're on the plane ride still. We haven't even landed. And right now, essentially, let's be honest, we're waiting on something to break. So I really think that unless the government, if the government doesn't continue to prop up the housing market when it starts to break, to be honest with you, man, I think that it's possible we have an economic crisis on our hands at the magnitude of the Great Depression. And there's also, and I know this sounds crazy, but there are similarities to what's happening in the Great Depression to what's happening right now. Specifically, the M2 money supply right now is going down while the Federal Reserve is doing quantitative tightening. Now, obviously, we don't have the stock market crash like the Great Depression, and also we don't have the pandemonium, the fear like the Great Depression. But when consumers start to realize and wake up to the fact that they're boiling frogs and boiling water, I think that pandemonium is going to start. And another thing that has not started, like it did in the Great Depression, is defaults, right? When the defaults happen, it's going to get crazy. Another thing that is similar to the Great Depression, Scott, that we have had right now is bank runs. Now, again, as far as the severity of the housing market crash, I still think we're in it. Obviously we're in an overvalued asset bubble. I still think we're in, the housing market crash. I think all that we've saw for the last 4.5 months is a type of dead cat bounce. It's all of that residual last hope, hanging on, giving up hope. We're just going to buy into society's narrative of American dream home ownership. We're going to buy. And I think that's what's going on here. But, I tell people constantly, Scott, if you don't want to listen to me, you don't want to listen to the realtors, you're frustrated, you just don't know who to believe, you just don't know what's happening, look to the recent owners, man. Look at what they're saying, right? The people that have no biasness, right? They bought a house, right? Anyone that bought a house from 2022 on, look at what they're saying. Scott, the buyer's remorse right now, last report that I reviewed, over 90%. So, in other words, I think that if people continue to keep their heads in the sand, Scott, if people continue to be blown in the wind, the lack of goal making, I think it's going to be worse. I think the only way it's not worse than 2008 is government intervention.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Travis. So we will have government intervention when this thing starts to turn for the worse. And I think logic would tell you it will, in fact, turn for the worse. The realities are we have plateaued. We've plateaued the biggest housing bubble ever artificially produced due to market manipulation in world history. So that alone is a pretty scary fact. Now it becomes what level of a downturn will it reach? Because it's not going to be able to sustain what it just went through because the artificial nature in which it was built is now being removed. So now it's flatlining at best. We got to wait to see what happens. Now, in previous bubbles, let's take '08, we had the Obama-backed loan modification program. When it started to turn, we'll see something similar most likely if and when this one starts to turn, where the government will step in and try to throw it a life vest. Unfortunately, in 2008, it didn't work. We crashed anyway. So now you get to ask yourself, because we've always had recessions throughout history here in America. We've had correctionary levels of a downturn, which many would say we're already in, at least at a correction. A recessionary level of a downturn, like maybe we saw in 2008, that was categorized as a recessionary level of a downturn, or a depressionary level of a downturn, like we saw in the great stock market crash and Great Depression in the 1929 era. Correction, recession, depression. One of the three are coming, so you get to take your pick. Now, a correction, I believe, clearly has taken place because we can monitor the health and the fitness of the U.S. housing market. What's it doing? Is it still going through mass appreciation? No, it's flatlining at best, even going down in many areas. So the downward trend clearly has started. If we look at 2008, which is a really similar bubble in terms of mass appreciation, overnight appreciation, and never seen before highs, a lot of similarities are kind of being shown from 2008. In 2008 era, it took about 5 years for that thing to max out. So we're at the front end of this, tail end of a crisis, front end of a recession. So now we get to see what's going to happen. But I believe you hit the nail right on the head, Travis. Friends, if and when this thing turns, you're going to see some bailouts directed at the housing market, but they didn't work in the past. This one is really quite volatile, to say the least. And like you said, millions of people went and bought at the height, and they wish they hadn't. That alone should tell us something, Travis.
In Scott, we don't have to guess anymore. You know, like last year when I first started, I kind of had to guess. We didn't have the data. But now that we have the data, we can compare what's happening right now to literally like any recession, going even back to the last inflationary recession, the 70s and 80s. Big difference right there. We didn't have a 50% run up in house values in 2 years. Big difference in the 70s and 80s, still inflation, but big difference as far as home values. Actually, in the 70s and 80s, home values went up because they had room to go up. From Case-Shiller, we'll quote our data, I can do that easily. When we compare Case-Shiller data from what's going on now, the start of this crash, when we compare the start of this crash to the start of the last crash, which actually started in 2006, okay? So when we compare the start of 2006 to the start of this crash side by side, the trajectory and unsustainability is worse. The start of this crash is worse. I see it. You can see it. Case-Shiller, I'll give you the example. In 2006, around the mid part of 2006, again, go to Case-Shiller, we had equity decline. I'm not talking median sales price. I'm talking value, right? A value calculation. We had value decline in 2006 for 4 months. After that, Scott, the market rebounded, dead cat bounce, whatever you want to call it. It rebounded for 7 months before a 2-year free fall. Now, fast forward to today. What happened today? Okay, we started with equity decline accelerating past the last equity decline, the start of the last, accelerating right past that. But instead of 4 months, we had 7 months of equity decline. And instead of 7 months of equity improvement before a total collapse, right now we had less than 5. So again, I understand we don't know. I understand that the government can come in and prop up various things in the market. But the fact is, Scott, it's not sustainable without that money supply from the Federal Reserve. Consumers can't sustain. You know, there's only so long someone is going to live in a house that they can't afford, that they're struggling to live in, before they're going to throw their hands up and they're going to say, I quit. It happened to me. I know the psychology of it. So I really think that I think the industry in full, Scott, is doing, like realtors and investors are doing a horrible job about talking about the warning signs. They just say, you don't have a crystal ball. Shame on you for warning people. But the thing is yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I have historical precedents of caution. What is that maybe? Well, let's look at the yield curve inversion. The yield curve inversion warns us. It says the pain is coming. It's not here yet. It's coming. We have been inverted for about 13 months. On average, we stay inverted for 15 months and then recession. And then the interesting thing is like the yield curve reinverts when the pain hits. Scott, the yield curve isn't even reinverted yet. The reason is because the real pain isn't even here yet. We got a taste of it March of this year when we had the bank runs. And what did they do? The Federal Reserve put a Band-Aid on it. Now, maybe they did that, Scott, because they're genius and they wanted to keep us in this quantitative tightening plane ride. Or maybe they did it because they wanted to mess everything up. I don't know, but I choose to believe in hope. Maybe this is false hope, Scott, but I choose to believe that maybe, just maybe, Jerome Powell is doing the right thing by fooling the markets into thinking everything's okay so that he can continue to boil us alive. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Well, pretty logical explanation. And as somebody who has been studying the data very thoroughly, who's become a student of the markets, as somebody who works in the industry, I believe we can trust a lot of what Travis just said, if not all. Personally, I trust everything Travis just said. So now it becomes forward thinking, critical thinking. Like you said, data is a lagging indicator. It's told us what's happened, and there's many things now that I believe, more things are pointing towards a downturn than are supporting it being able to sustain itself. We're starting to throw bailouts around already. We're bailing out banks. We've seen bank runs happen. We're one news event away from it happening again. A lot of people think this may be done on purpose, whether it was on accident or on purpose. We don't care. We'll get out of the problem and in the solution. But like Travis said, I believe personally, friends, we're never going to time the bottom. If you're sitting around waiting for the bottom, or if you're buying foreclosure courses, how to buy foreclosure, I don't think we're quite there yet. We will see bailouts occur if and when the foreclosure crisis starts. Now, typically, every time the market exhibits bubble behavior, short sales, bank-owned, and foreclosures will come. We see eviction filings starting to spike. We know when there's no more foreclosure bans, there's no more mortgage forbearance, there's no more eviction bans. We are going to tame these markets one way or the other. It's now, can we tame them without crashing them? And that's where I believe channels like this hopefully keep our head on straight as we continue to heat map. Not cheering for a crash. We just put a percentage of likelihood on it that's in fact a potential that's going to happen. If we're buying in this environment, it's so important to get in the hands of a real estate agent that's not cheerleading it, willing to roll up their sleeves, maybe offend a few buyers or sellers along the way and put your needs before their own. That is going to be tricky right now as we see more agents dropping out of the industry like never seen before, except in the last bubble. More indicators showing us, in fact, that's what's going on. So if this thing crashes, make no mistake, it will be worse than the last one. Bigger bubble, bigger blowback. Travis, do you got any final thoughts for our viewers today?
My final thought, Scott, would be to people on the sideline right now that are struggling, okay, whether they're priced out or whether they're choosing to hold out. I would say, really, I want to end here, Scott. There's two things that I believe that everyone should hold on to before working on purchasing power, like before the credit, income, assets, mindset, all of these types of things. The two things that need to come before those things, Scott, in my opinion, is number one, hope. The moment that consumers give up hope, generally they're dead in the water. They go back to reckless spending or whatever they were doing their entire life to get in the situation they were in before. So the number one most important thing, my opinion, on the sideline, hope. Number two, goals. Our goals will shape our approach. And if we have goals and our goal is home ownership and we actually plan out what that looks like, we don't have to time the bottom of the market. The moment that we find that great deal, we execute. We get it. We go after it. But we don't know what that is. We don't know what that looks like unless we have those goals and unless we have those goals and we have the knowledge of how the market works. So I'm only saying, Scott, for the love of all that's holy, please don't lose hope. stick to your goals. Don't keep your head in the sand. And that's how I'd like to end, my friend.
Thank you so much, Travis. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please jump over to the Real Estate Mindset. There'll be a link in the description below. Travis, I'm going to go ahead and do my outro right now, but I'd like you, after I finish mine, to do yours because I really love Travis's outro. If you appreciate the content, I want to humbly ask you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below. We would absolutely love to hear from you. If you need help buying or selling real estate here in America, the biggest network of top-rated agents in the nation ready to assist you, it'd be my honor and my privilege to do so. Email in the description for you as well. If you're watching from your television set today, another video will be coming into your screen and an easy subscribe icon for your convenience. As always, thank you for your time. Please go make it count today. And we'll see you on the next video.
And if you're out there investing in real estate, we wish you luck and we hope you win.